Tansei Tanawa to this presentation series. My name is Marie Carrière, and I'm the Associate Dean of Research in the Faculty of Arts at the University of Alberta, and also co-chair of the Arts Working Group for Indigenous Initiatives in this faculty. I would like to begin by recognizing the University of Alberta's location on Treaty 6 land and in the homeland of the Métis Nation, Region 4. This gathering place for Sigiru Indigenous peoples, including, among others, the Cree, Nakota, Dene, Blackfoot, Inuit, and the Métis. As a French-Canadian settler, I draw many benefits from this land. I commit to use my position as a university professor and administrator to learn more deeply and respect the spirit and intent of treaty, and to forge stronger and lasting relationships with Indigenous peoples, including my students, colleagues, and fellow inhabitants of this place. This series is brought to you by the Arts Working Group for Indigenous Initiatives, better known as AWGII, and I would like to thank our two elder community members for so aptly inspiring the Cree title for these events, åhpin'toyahk, we help each other up. On behalf of AWGII, I would also like to thank our sponsors, Edmonton Heritage Council and the FIRE Grant, which stands for Funding Indigenous Resurgence in Edmonton, as well as the Cool Institute for Advanced Study. I have the distinct honor today to introduce both our wonderful speakers. To start, Rebecca Belmore, a member of the Lac Seul First Nation, is an internationally recognized Anishinaabe multidisciplinary artist. Rooted in the political and social realities of Indigenous communities, Rebecca Belmore's works make evocative connections between bodies, land, and language. Her work has been presented in solo exhibitions at institutions including the Odin Art Museum in Whistler, British Columbia, the Musée d'Art Contemporain de Montréal in Montreal, Quebec, and the Art Gallery of Ontario in Toronto. Her work has been presented in major international exhibitions, including the Istanbul Biennial in Turkey, at Documenta in Kassel, Germany, and at the 51st Venice Biennale. Rebecca Belmore has received numerous awards and recognitions, including the Gershon Escalate Prize, the Governor General's Award in Visual and Media Arts, the Natishin Visual Arts Award, and the Jack and Doris Shadbolt Foundation's Viva Award. This afternoon, Rebecca will be in conversation with my good colleague, Tanya Harnett, who is Associate Professor in the Department of Art and Design, with a joint appointment with the Faculty of Native Studies. Tanya graduated from the U of A with an MFA, or Masters of Fine Arts, in drawing, working in various media, including photography, drawing, printmaking, and fiber. Tanya Harnett's studio practice engages in the notions and politics of identity, history, spirituality, and place. She is a member of the Carry the Kettle First Nations in Saskatchewan. And so Tanya and Rebecca, over to you.
Hi.
Hi, Tanya. How are you?
Very good. It's a long time since I've seen you.
I know, or maybe at least a couple of years, I think.
Yeah. Time goes by fast.
In the big bad city of Toronto.
Yeah, that's right.
And I was just thinking, like incidentally here, I recently saw a play by the young playwright Cliff Cardinal, where he viciously attacks land acknowledgements, and I was there with my sister to watch his performance, and I have to say that it was very refreshing, hard, funny, enlightening, bold, brave, and quite beautiful. So I think these are some things we should talk about, this land acknowledgement, because it's become part and parcel of, it's become systemic or systematic. And I think it's, it can sound hollow. So I would rather, with all the issues we have recently, like with the children, I would rather people, instead of doing lip service, put their money where their mouth is and do something to help. So that's a good start.
I think those land acknowledgements are important, but I'd like to hear about the personal connection to the ground. I'd like to feel what people are, how they engage.
Yeah, I guess it's maybe it's new and we're still figuring it out. Maybe that's, you know, if I was to be generous, that's what I would offer in terms of thinking that it's still relatively new, and yeah, we are figuring it out. But
well,
it's not done.
I've been thinking about what kind of questions and discussions we would have. We've spoke lots, many times, and but we haven't been in contact through COVID time, and so, you know, I think that, well, you're part of the Canadian conscious. You know, you always double check and make people think, and think again, and so not always gentle. It's hard. It's hard stuff. I think what occurred to me that what you're doing is you're putting your finger on the bruises of the soft spots of the Canadian context.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it, Tanya. Like, I think that growing up in this country as an Indigenous person, and specifically as an Indigenous female, you know, going through the education system, which you are part of now, going through the education system, and especially like in the, you know, I would have to say now in the 70s, the early 70s is when I started as a child, and how terrible or horribly unrepresented our existence was at that time, you know, and to be a child and to realize, like, oh my God, like we're not here, we're missing, you know. And I think that has a lot to do, that says a lot about this country that we live in and the history that we've had to deal with in terms of living with this country, and then trying to assert our own histories and existence. And you know, we all know what happened to our languages and whatnot through residential schools and all those you know, those dead children's bodies that are scattered onto the land, you know, into the ground out there unmarked. So we're, unfortunately, you know, I'm 62 now, so we're now in we're now in the 21st century, when this is not the 1970s. And unfortunately, we're still, in my opinion, we're no further ahead than when I was 12. So give us, that's 50 years, you know. We have, you know, we have made segues into institutions like yourself, for example, and many of our colleagues, you know, in various schools across the country. But, you know, it only happened in the recent times. So
yeah, and it's still a push. We still push the institutions from the inside.
Yeah, and I think it's great that from when I went to art school for 2 years to today, I see a lot of, like, you know, at Emily Carr here or at AWGII or down there in Lethbridge when you were there, there are programs, or there are larger numbers of Indigenous students within the system, getting their education, changing the system from within. And I think that's all really, really great. I'm very happy to visit and to be with Indigenous students who are studying to become artists.
Yeah. That performance workshop you did with my students is still spoken about quite a bit. So
that was a beautiful experience, because what I loved about that is the site itself was so beautiful. We had such a beautiful, you know, the Arthur Erickson brutalist building, framing the intensely gorgeous landscape and giving us, you know, all the possibilities for creating a visual experience and creating something beautiful. I think that students really took advantage of it, and I think I was quite impressed, I have to say.
I'm glad that you do those sorts of things. I know you're going to want to show your piece that you have done, and I'm really interested in hearing you talk about that, because I actually haven't heard you, and it's beautiful. If we can pull up one of those images right away, and then we can
dive into it.
Yeah.
This was 2017. The piece is titled Biinjiya'iing Onji, which is Anishinaabe, Moen, or From Inside. So in 2017, I worked on 2 projects simultaneous. One was here for the national parks in Canada, and then I also worked on a project for the document 2017. It's document 14, which took place in 2017. And it happened in Castle and also in Athens, Greece. So as an artist, I guess I would like to maybe speak to the students here. As an artist, you know, you get to go, you get invited by curators, of course, and then you get to come up with a project if that's what they are interested in. So it's kind of a relationship between curators and the artist. And I got to go to the city of Athens, which was incredible. I went with my sister, and then I went with my husband as well. So I got to do a site visit and come home, think about, you know, what it was that I wanted to do. So I was already working in national parks for this other project, so it made sense that I was drawn to this idea of thinking about camping, the tent, and in particular tents, like a tent form as being kind of like a dome shape, which is, you know, reminiscent for me in terms of its reference to the wigwam form. So that's kind of where I started. I started thinking about my childhood, my awesome childhood of spending time with our grandparents and our mother, my siblings, you know, out on the water, out on the land, fishing every day, swimming every day, drinking water directly from the lake, fetching water from the lake. So I was really thinking a lot about like reminiscing, and then being in Athens for a site visit at that time, down at Piraeus Pier in the city, which is in the heart of the city, there was a large refugee camp. So a group of us artists, you know, we piled into a taxi. We went to the equivalent of a Canadian Tire, bought some sleeping bags and some camping gear, and took it to them as a gift or as an offering. And then we were probably there for 15, 20 minutes. And the camp was very large. It was probably at least 100 tents, you know, on this wharf, stuck between this huge industrial building and the edge of the wharf. So the water was right there. So for me, that was like a really charged situation. And it made me come home and think about tents, you know, like the tent and my relationship to it. So in Athens, I'm going to just go on and then I'll let you interrupt, Tanya. In Athens, I was able to secure the services of a marble carver. And came home and I was sitting around with my husband, Osvaldo, and I said, do you think I could have a tent carved out of marble? And he said, of course. So then I set about making that happen. And so I actually went several times to Athens. You know, I would give workshops with students, like graduate students and whatnot, and, you know, as a part of the process of getting funding. And so this is how it all works, really. You know, there's always things cost. So they have to figure out ways to fund things. And that usually ends up being the artist somehow workshopping their way through the system and getting to do to facilitate the project a lot at the same time. So when I went on a visit, I got to go to this amazing mountainside where they showed me where the stone for this tent was cut from. So they cut a piece of stone that was 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters. And he said it was right here. So I got to touch the wall. And, you know, the quarry is so massive and so beautiful. It was like a cathedral. We drove into the mountain, if you can believe it. And they cut vast sections of marble out. And so it's interesting. What was interesting for me is this quarry is older, and it was, you know, it's moved over the years, over the hundreds of years. But where it started was where most of the stone for the Acropolis was mined from. So I like that idea. And of course, they back in the day miraculously, moved the mountain to the Acropolis. The title is Biinjiya'iing Onji, which translates to from inside. So you could actually go into the tent, and this would be your view from inside. So I was, entitling the work, I was thinking about from inside. This beautiful marble is from inside the mountain, and then as a work, you get to go inside, and from inside you see the Parthenon on the Acropolis. It was all very intense, and it was an amazing experience to actually to get the site as well was not easy, because it's a protected archaeological heritage site, and we had to fight to put the tent there, which was basically the organizers, like all the curatorial team, dealing with the historic society of the city and whatnot. But it worked out in the end, which I'm really pleased about.
Rebecca, is that carved on the inside? Is it completely? It was.
So if you imagine a block, and it was hauled off down to a part of Athens, to a certain neighborhood, and it was CNC'd, so it was cut by a machine, like computer, and diamond saws that have water running through it, so they don't heat up too much. So it was basically cut, hollowed out. The bottom was lopped off, so it matches perfectly. And it was hollowed out, and then they started to carve and take away. So they were joking with me that I should be very sure about my composition, because you can take away the stone, but you can't put it back.
Yes,
that was very nerve-wracking, and it was really quite an experience, because to have this setting, which going back to my childhood and the textbooks and 1972. And seeing pictures of the Parthenon and the Acropolis and being so awed by it back then, so to push ahead 50 years or so, pretty interesting.
Big change. Did you find that there was this association when you went, oh, this is where Western philosophy comes from?
For me, it was charged in the sense that a lot of, the Parthenon is like a very complicated site in terms of its history and all the people who have been through there, and all the, where all the material comes from, pillaging other places, bringing stuff, it's a really loaded symbol. And then having this opportunity to place the art object, and situate it so that you have a view of this, but at the same time knowing very well, like all this time, there is a refugee camp down in the harbor. So I think, in terms of like how we, how history is valued, and how current events or current displacement of peoples, so real, so it's interesting how, for me, all of those things were so poignant, and so I felt it very strongly. And at the same time, I was working on the project in the parks here in Canada. So, parks here in this country are protected sites. And if you think about these refugees, in the harbor, they have no place, there is nothing protecting them. Their land is not protected. So all of those things go into the thought process. And for me, with this work and, from inside, the days would be nice and hot, and inside you could get into this tent and it was really nice and cool. It was kind of like a reprieve, or like a sanctuary, which was contemplative in terms of you get to look at this seat of, this crazy Western civilization symbol. It's very complex, but at the same time, I think of it as being very simple.
You've challenged sort of the Western construct your whole career. And I'm just thinking how that's changed over the years. When you think about you know, the bustle, the dress when you're going to meet, you know, royalty, and you know, how's that developed over your period? Has it changed the way you look at things over time?
Well, I think perhaps as a younger artist, I was more in your face, you know. I was more, and I think that has a lot to do with being younger. Like it's a youth kind of, you know, more knee-jerk reaction, more, you know, more a bit more raw and crazy. And maybe with time, things become more refined. I think, you know, as we practice for 30 years or more now, you know, things become more refined. And yeah, you know, I miss my younger self sometimes. We all do, don't we? Oh my God, yeah.
Well, I've been wondering what you're up to too. So I'm thinking about what's in your COVID bubble right now. Have you? My
COVID bubble. I guess I was in Toronto in 2020, and I spent most of my time, you know, walking my route, you know, up to the grocery store, up to the liquor store, over to the cafe, over to a restaurant. Yeah, it was like kind of like a path that I kind of trod, and you know, it became kind of routine. You know, off to the laundromat, and I think, you know, I did a lot of thinking more than anything else. I was thinking a lot. I wasn't doing much, but moving moving through my routine. But I think, you know, now I have a new project that I'm working on for. I'm in the Whitney Biennale this year, so I'm presenting a new sculpture, and I think that that sculpture came out of that thought process, you know, having that time to think. So, you know, I think COVID had, you know, affected artists in many different ways. And I, you know, I have lots of artist friends, and I know that many artists, you know, were super productive. Many artists, you know, people dealt with it in different ways. And I think that, you know, that attests to like how diverse we are as artists and how practice can be so diverse. And that's the beauty of, you know, the business that we're in.
Yeah. You know, I've been working on some smallpox work myself, and before COVID, and it's really changed how people looked at the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I think that there's more understanding of what's happening from a first perspective, how smallpox might have worked.
It makes me think, immediately makes me think of Ruth Cuthand's beautiful, amazing beadwork pieces where she beadworks all those, like all those viruses, and amazing, like how, and I think I had conversations with, you know, friends like who are non-native friends, artists.
Yeah.
One in particular, I won't say his name, but we had a great conversation where, you know, I was sitting somewhere at a bar in Toronto, and he was at his home in Winnipeg. Oh, he lives in Winnipeg. He was saying to me, you know, because he was having a drink too. So we're just like commiserating, and he said, now it makes me think about how, you know, poison blankets were real. Like, you know, he said, it's all very real now. People, you know, now that we know how easy it was, you know, how easy it was to spread diseases and kill people.
Yeah, it's not unimaginable anymore.
No, and everybody, like, I think it really did make our planet smaller in terms of us humans and our numbers. You know, we know that we are so many, like, and we're like, I hate looking at the time clock. I'm going
to stretch it longer. There's a lot of politics out there. You're a magnet to politics, and you know, you kind of, I don't know if you are, or the politics is a magnet to you, but somehow you're always on top of things with a comment, an interpretation, and an intuitive interpretation, I almost think. Guttural. when you're reacting to things. And I'm just thinking about Joe Clark on the steps of the Parliament building, and that event that you were. It was a very profound moment. That
yes, I remember speaking to then Prime Minister Brian Mulroney and inviting him to speak through the megaphone, and he denied. He didn't want to do it. He said he had a meeting to go to, which ironically was the Charlottetown, whatever that was called, the Accord, where First Nations people were not invited or considered or even part of the talks. And so for me, that was extremely predictable and at the same time ironic. And then Joe Clark came along, 5 minutes later. It's like a joke, Of course, it's the Prime Minister, it's him. And I asked him the same question, and he was kind enough to say, get to the megaphone and say, "Mother Earth, we need you," which I thought was, he took like "Mother Earth, we need you" with 5 words.
That's what he said.
30 seconds.
Yes.
He said, and that's the difference between those two men,
Wow. I didn't know. I've seen the picture, but I didn't know.
He said, "Mother Earth, we need you."
Wow, that's fantastic. Huh.
Yeah.
The Charlottetown Accord. Elijah Harper.
Yeah, amazing, huh?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
Let's have a piece of paper here. Yeah.
If you haven't heard anything about Elijah Harper to the students, I think Charlottetown Accord.
Yeah.
Can we rattle off some important Indian political things? Charlottetown Accord.
No. Was his vote no?
What's that?
Did he say no?
He held up the feather and stopped. He was in the legislative building, and he stopped by one.
There's beautiful photos of that moment there.
He was. Were you at Sakahan?
Sakahan. No, I didn't go to that. I was elsewhere.
He died that night before.
Oh no!
Just before he passed, right before the opening. He was supposed to be attending that opening, and I got it. Somehow, somebody said wanted to come to the house and meet him, so I was at the wake.
Wow,
that's not the wake. That was a strange thing. That was a strange thing, but such an important people. And I don't think people know how much First Nations follow politics. And I can't help but thinking that this is a political hotbed right now, and you must be just soaking it up and trying to digest it.
I'm honking for freedom.
What's that?
I said, I'm honking for freedom.
I'm watching.
I used to work in a truck stop for many, many years, so I know what the sound is. I know what it's like to have 40 trucks in the yard with their trucks running with the steam, going straight up into the air, like a small village. It's really interesting visual for me to go back to would be like the late 80s when I was a waitress at a truck stop on the Trans-Canada Highway. So I'm very familiar with some of, the culture of it because of my experience of, being on the periphery of it. Yeah. A waitress in a truck stop.
That's amazing. Okay, so there's a lot of material. I'm looking forward to see what you're going to do, but I have a whole bunch of questions, speed questions.
Yeah.
Morning person or night person?
Morning person.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee and tea.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla ice cream.
80s or 90s?
80s.
Dogs or cats?
Cats.
Burger or salad?
Burger.
London or New York?
New York.
Brush or pen?
Pen.
Flying or driving?
Driving.
Cheesies or beef jerky?
Beef jerky. I get it from Lori Blondeau.
That's a road trip thing, especially on reserves. Hey, you go to the always cheese and okay, KFC or anything else?
KFC or anything else? I prefer like a good pasta. Simple.
Yeah.
The lemon pasta.
Anything else?
From Tironi's in Toronto.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I have to say that there is a really community for Aboriginal artists. We pretty much know, we all know each other. And we're like family.
Big family. We are, and it's interesting because AWGII will go to Venice, so we'll all be there. I'll see you in Venice, I guess.
Yeah.
and
that's where we're going.
I think we can travel the world and bring our conversation and and further the conversation. Always.
That's exactly how I feel, is that we move as a cabal. We're always going, and whether it's like Australia or wherever it is, the conversations pick up within the group.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Good times. Good times and bad times.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we're very protective of the content. There's this Indian circle, and then there's outside, and so if there's something coming at the group, we've got each other's backs.
Yeah, good. Thank you so much.
Wow, that's great.
Happy to be here.
There must be questions.
Rebecca, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of your previous work's engagement with sound and with listening. I was lucky enough to experience your wave sound installation on the Minnewanka shoreline a few years ago. It was so beautiful, and of course, the Vigil art performance is about sound in such visceral ways. And is that something that you're working into your current projects?
I think sound, like, for example, when you speak of like Vigil, which was, the main action was to yell the names of the missing and murdered women, to put the voice out and put the name out into public space. And then, of course, with wave sound, various sites, four sites, 4 national parks in Canada, having the object, which was kind of conical, it's conical shape, with an cast ear at the one end to signify that it's a listening device. So it's, and they were all facing water so that you would listen to water is the concept. So, I think like the act of voicing or speaking and the act of listening, like sound is a two-way street. It's very much sound. Listening is part of sound as making the sound is, So I really, and at the same time, like the new work, like say the newer work, or the same year, the tent is about sitting in the quiet. So quiet is also a sound environment too, so like some kind of solace or quietude, So sound is, very much a part of who we are as humans. Like we come into this world with a voice, we cry, that's the first thing we do is we cry. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And in death, we are silent, so sound is a huge part of our body. When you rest at night, you can hear the sounds of your own body if you really listen. And I think sound is such a part of who we are as human beings. Music is a good example. Music, or our ability to hear. When the other day I was out, the birds were going crazy, and it's so beautiful to stop and to listen. I think that sound is everywhere. Sound is part of who we are. It's part of our body.
I'd love to hear about Rebecca's experience of the Venice Biennale.
That was 2005, so that's almost 20 years ago. 17 years ago. That was similar, and I got to do a couple of site visits. I was living in Vancouver at the time, sort of traversing from here to there, and thinking about water fountains. Here in Vancouver, a lot of architecture, especially, it's less so now, but back in the early 2000s, maybe the late 1990s, water features were all the rage for architects to design and decorate their buildings with. And so then I noticed little beautiful, beautiful, beautiful fountains in Venice, in a little plaza, it'd be like a little lion with water coming out of his mouth. So I just put it all together, thinking about water and thinking about water as as a commodity, as a resource, water as our bodies, and with that piece, creating a fountain, because it's called fountain, where blood is thrown onto the water, and so then the water becomes blood. And I'm the performer, so I stand and gaze at you, and this blood is between us. And as a piece, I think it was ahead of its time, because maybe the conversation wasn't there yet. It certainly is there now. And coincidentally, the piece is now installed at Buxton University in Melbourne, Australia. So it's running right now. It's up till May. It was at another university in Brisbane, the Griffin University. Griffin. Anyways, so that's if you think of it as a work that had its beginning in 2005, and it's finally gotten some play in 15 years later, which is maybe some works are sleepers and time catches up to them. So Venice was amazing. I got to go there more than once during installation. I got to live there for 7 weeks. Coincidentally, again, I'm going for a residency for 3 months, starting April, May, June. So I get to be a visitor and not the artist, So I think it's really, it's really interesting. Like as you practice and how things kind of connect and reconnect and repeat themselves, and time trudges forward, and so does your work. But Venice was a poignant moment for me, for sure. And thinking about connecting the water here in Vancouver, like out at Iona Beach, and connecting, using the water there in Venice for the actual work. So it's the interconnectedness of water itself, and its relationship to all our relations, and especially our human bodies. And how, water is troubled, and water is not infinite, and we should be very, very concerned about it. But we're not there yet, we buy water all the time in a jug or a container at the gas station. Yeah. So, water is a commodity, and that's, if it's not free, it's not free to all of, and if you think about it, in this country, many First Nations communities don't have potable water. So what the hell, man? So land acknowledgement, whatever, water, yeah, let's do something. That's what I say.
Yeah, the 150-year project. Can you talk about that one a little bit more?
Yeah, 150 years. It was funny. At first, it was a joke. Oh yeah, 150 years. Where the project came about as a part of 150 years of Canada as a country, and then the irony of working in protected sites, which is like national parks, which I am happy that they are protected. They are beautiful. They're magnificent. And then the challenge of working in such a site, how do you compete with the beauty of nature, the immensity? How do you make it work? How do you situate your idea out on the land So it was very challenging, I would have to say. It was extremely challenging, and I think I found my best way of coping with the challenge, which was to use the actual rock face itself and to turn that into the object and have the human body relate to it physically. And I think it worked. What I like about how it worked is that because the works were of the rock itself on site,
Yeah.
works blended so well into the landscape so that they almost disappeared. You had to come across them and almost trip over it before you noticed that it was there. And I had to fight for that. I had to fight not to have signage right on top of it. So as an artist, you have to fight for things. You have to fight. You have to fight your own people, funders. You have to fight for the idea. That's your responsibility as an artist. When you're the artist, it's your responsibility to negotiate everything with the system of art, with museums, with curators, with people, with installers. It's like, it's all negotiating, and it's all about protecting your work rather than, having to put up with shit and push through it and get over it too.
The show at Winnipeg,
yeah,
the one at Winnipeg where that piece got quite damaged. That seems to be where you're going with the conversation.
It's damaged.
What's that?
Which one?
It was right outside Winnipeg, the gallery, or Saskatoon, actually, the one in Saskatoon. Sorry about that. Yeah. Can you talk about how that one was damaged? And
well, that's interesting because it was an ice piece, like a temporary time-based installation that had to do with the death of Neil Stonechild, and the ice carried his surname, and it was apparently damaged by somebody kicking it, destroy it, and it was caught on tape. They never showed me the tape, so they had to protect. So it's an institution has to protect itself as well. It has its own liability issues, and as an artist, you are an insider, but you're also still an outsider. So that's really important to know those things. As a practicing artist, you have to learn how these systems work, and you have to figure out how to negotiate with them, and you have to figure out how willing how far you're going to go with compromises. All those things that they don't teach you in school.
The Neil Stonechild was a big issue.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that everybody here would be familiar with it.
Yeah, Neil Stonechild was a young 17-year-old who was found frozen to death outside the Queen Elizabeth II power plant outside of the city of Saskatoon, so on the outskirts of the city. That's where his body was found in a field, and he was wearing one shoe, and he had marks on his wrists that were obviously made from handcuffs. So the police took him on a Starlight tour and dropped him off over there when he was under the influence, and he perished. He froze to death. So a number of these deaths had taken place around the same period of time. Like, I think, that was 1978 when he died. But in the early 2000s, I think the year 2000, there were three more deaths. So of the same kind of situation where men who were under the influence were driven to the outskirts of town, like you imagine -40, -50, wind chill, that kind of thing, and dropped off. So it's like you walk home, basically you walk or die. So some died. Some survived.
Was Blood on the Snow part of
that? What a terrible body of work.
What's that?
Blood on the Snow, yeah, Blood on the Snow. Yeah, that's all part. It's all tied in. It's all tied into those histories, those stories. And to try to, Blood on the Snow is a quiet place. It's a quiet, like how snow is so quiet. Snow as a witness is a quiet witness.
I want to talk about that too a little bit, because that piece is comforters that are all, it's like this puffy down, but there's the it cozies like a tea cozy over a chair, and blood is at the head of the chair, or the redness of it is at the chair.
Redness is like it's a dye.
Yeah.
So it's like cloth dye, but it's, of course, it's meant to reference blood.
Yeah.
And it's at the top of the chair, which is like, it's an unusual placement for it. It's not on the ground, you know, it's coming from the sky above, you know. I mean, in terms of like a landscape, you know, if you think of the piece, because of its scale, it kind of has a landscape aspect to it, which I consider, you know, to be a wintry prairie setting, you know. And then the blood is on the chair. The chair is the witness, you know. The chair is empty, but somebody was there, you know. There was a witness. So I think if you think of all these men dying out in the cold, out in the frozen snow, like, people decided to leave them there, you know, very specific people. And I think that's what we have to remember, and the quiet, you know, the hush.
I want to make a plug for Tasha Hubbard's film on the Stonechild.
Yeah, that's a good film.
Yeah, and she's a faculty member here. So we're really lucky to have her. She's been doing some excellent films, part of the Faculty of Native Studies, and geez, amazing stuff. Take a look at her repertoire. Amazing work for her.
Right.
So Maureen Groban says, great to see you here. And are you still coming to talk? Yeah.
Thank you both. Thank you for your thoughts and your dialogue about land, water, viewing from the inside, as the photograph that you showed us, the photograph from the tent showed us, Rebecca. Land acknowledgements. I think we have a lot of work and more talking to do. I do want to remind folks about the upcoming and third event in the series, which will feature author Billy Ray Belcourt in conversation with Tanya. And that dialogue will take place on March 17th, again at 12 noon Mountain Time. And so hopefully folks will be able to join us for that. Otherwise, merci. Merci, Cho, and take care, everyone.